Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Fresh Creatives Podcast. We're here for episode 5. I'm Trey Rand.
And I am Manning Moore.
And today we've got some cool works that Manning and I have been working on in the past week. We've got a really nice VFX tip for camera tracking and lens distortion. And then we'll be talking about why you may or may not be using the wrong software while you're working. And finally, we'll end with a couple of cool resources we found throughout the week. All right, Manning, so why don't you show us what you got?
Absolutely. So I have for you this week this render that I did. I called it Kodak in my files because it was based off of an image that I found on Kodak's Instagram page. And I just matched the angle and kind of the general feel of it, and then all the models and stuff I took over on my own. So this scene was generated by me and my wife. We decided to create something that was like a mixture of a coffee shop and a plant shop. So we called it Grounds, and I did a little logo right here for it. And then we got plants all over the place because it's a plant shop. And then we've got coffee mysteriously somewhere around here. I actually didn't put a coffee mug into the scene. Probably should have done that. But this is the 3D viewport right here in Cinema 4D. Pretty simple, pretty chill. Very hacky if you get away from the camera. Everything just kind of looks really weird and wonky, but that's just kind of how you have to do it sometimes. I'm sure you understand. Yeah, it was a really fun scene to work on. I had these roof slabs. Got the idea from, there's a couple coffee shops in my town that does stuff like that, so I got that idea. I got most of these models are actually from Adobe stock, so they're pretty well modeled, good textures, and it ended up working out pretty well, at least in my opinion. Yeah, so there it is. Any questions?
I really dig the way this looks. I mean, I didn't realize the story behind the way you had created this. I just seen the final image. So this is kind of cool that you created this together with your wife.
Yeah.
That's exciting stuff.
She's big into plants, and we wanted to, I kind of wanted to include her on this. So she kind of helped me with the placement and the choosing of whatever plants are here. So it was a really fun project to work with her.
Wow, that's super cute.
Aw.
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't jealous.
Thanks, babe.
Looks really good. I like the colors here and all that. Yep. So I have been working on my scene for school, as always and forever. I've updated a little bit, so I modified the trees, added a bunch of stuff, and worked on the lighting and stuff. So here you can see it kind of how I want it to look at the end. So there's still a lot of stuff I need to work on. But I'm kind of happy with how this is turning out. For a while there, I wasn't very confident in the result. But now that I look at it more complete, it feels much more interesting, which I think is the interesting thing about art. Art generally doesn't look good until the final few stages of the process.
Right, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
You kind of have to get over that like initial feeling of like, wow, this is complete shit. What am I doing with my life? And just keep going and trust the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm absolutely loving the lighting on this. I think it looks incredible, and it really complements everything here.
Yeah, I like it as well. I tried to import this into Unreal, but I had some issues with the lighting and stuff. So I think for the purposes of the project, I might just keep it in Blender.
Okay.
And then after the project is over and I have more time to focus on things, refine them, I'll focus on maybe porting it over to Unreal and adding a lot more detail and stuff that's difficult to do in Blender.
Gotcha.
And then upload that to my portfolio.
Yeah. So. That sounds good, dude. Wow, it looks, I'm going to keep pushing again because I want to see a snow particle sim in this scene. I do. I think it would look really cool.
I know. I need to take a look at that.
Okay.
That'll probably be like one of the last things that I do.
Sure.
But it's definitely one of the things that when it happens, it will add a lot to the scene with a relatively small amount of work.
Yeah. So. It looks so good, dude. Very well done. I'm impressed.
So that's all I've got for this scene. Manning, you want to go ahead and show us what you got for VFX tips?
Absolutely. So right here, we have the process for undistorting and redistorting camera data in After Effects. So when you shoot something on a camera, every single lens that you use is going to have lens distortion. And to get a 100% accurate track and an accurate comp, we're going to need to remove the lens distortion. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that in After Effects. This is our process, and I'll just show you how to do it just like this. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to hide the top layer. I'm going to apply optics compensation. We're going to check reverse lens distortion and resize to unlimited. And then we're going to go ahead and stretch this out until this pole right here becomes vertical. I think that looks pretty good. So now what we can do is pre-comp. I'm going to call this undistorted. We're going to move all attributes into the new composition. So let's dive into here. We're going to go ahead and copy the effect. And we're also going to go ahead and resize. So what we need to do is resize it so that the rest of that undistorted footage that's kind of pin cushioned out to the corners fits into this whole thing. So I'm just going to do small adjustments here and there, and that looks good to me. So we're going to hit OK. Now let's go back into our master comp. We're going to paste that optics compensation effect. I'm going to check reverse lens distortion, and this field of view center needs to be in the center of the comp. So we can pull up our title and action safe. We can zoom in to the center and just line that up. And that'll work out just fine. So once we have that, we're going to take our original shot. I'm going to reveal it, and we're going to hit difference so we can make sure that we can see everything in here. And we're just going to adjust the field of view until it matches just perfectly. Okay, so now we have our comps all set up. So let's go into here. We're going to pre-compose this one last time. And we're going to call, we're going to say this is actually, here we go. We're actually going to change the name of this to 3D track. And we're going to pre-compose this guy to be undistorted. Just like that. And so now we have a perfectly undistorted shot that we can camera track. And you can see all the alpha that's around there. It won't affect the camera track in any negative way. It's just going to affect this frame. So if we go ahead and apply 3D camera tracker, it's going to do its best and analyze everything. And here we go. We have our 3D tracked scene. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this end. We're going to create a ground plane right here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to call it ground plane. I'm also going to create a wall for, I'm going to create a wall null right here. And I'm going to create one back here. And so what we can do is I'm actually going to go ahead and you can see these are the new gizmos in After Effects, which is really cool and useful. I'm going to scale these guys up so that we get it at the corners. So we can show you exactly what this is going to be like. And then I'm just going to adjust that, scale, and we're going to adjust this guy. Oops. Scale. It's not 100% perfect, but then again, who is? So now that we have that, let's go and view. I'm I'll actually check that as a guide layer. And now look, we have our lens distortion applied. And this shot, it's straight and undistorted. And back here, it matches the original footage. So if we were to do this guy, add a little key. Look at that. We're back up on top.
That's pretty fancy if you ask me.
That's pretty fancy. We have that original lens distortion back and applied onto the shot. And it matches perfectly. So that's an important step. It is really good practice because every VFX studio is going to be doing this. This is part of their workflow, undistorting, tracking, and then reapplying lens distortion. It's incredibly important that you know how to do that process. And it's really good in After Effects to know how to do it because After Effects is such a cheap program. So that is the process on how to do that.
Maybe this is the reason that a lot of my attempts at VFX in the long past didn't look particularly great. Possibly. I always had a problem with camera tracking.
Yeah.
This could be one reason.
It's really good to go out and shoot a lens grid and use that information for the distortion. So in here, I really just kind of lined up this pole at the end. But what you would want to do is get actual lens distortion data. And you can do that by shooting a checkerboard, or if there's like a brick building, lining your camera up perfectly to the brick, and then shooting that for a second. And then you can use that as actual undistortion data. And that's pretty important.
The topic for today is you're not, or you are, using the wrong software. Maybe, who knows? I think it's quite obvious for a lot of people that are in the sort of art community for a long time that there are communities that grow up around different softwares. Blender has a very strong community. Something like Moho has also a good community. Maya is similar in that sense. So it's all people doing different programs and getting really good at them. And then if you're sort of new into it, the question is, well, which one do I use? Like, is there one program that's superior to all the others, right?
Right.
And the answer to that, in my opinion, is it depends.
Sure.
Like everything in life. But in this case, there are programs that are really good at some stuff and programs that aren't. And so what you have to do, especially if you're starting out, is just find a program and learn it rather than worrying about which one is the perfect one.
You know, what software did you begin learning? What was for 3D specifically? What did you learn on?
I started out in Blender because it was free and I didn't know if I was going to enjoy it. So I just began with a free program. And I think that's one of the benefits of Blender is that it is free. And it's also a very powerful program, and it gets more powerful with every single release.
Absolutely.
So if somebody is starting out, I think that they can absolutely start out in Blender. And it's going to be great. An important thing to note is that when it comes to learning a program, if you're just starting out, it's a lot like learning a language. Especially if you're, say, learning Blender, learning 3D, you have to learn all of the techniques, terms, different things, right? I mean, you have to learn what UV unwrapping is. You have to learn what mesh modeling is, what topology is, all these things that are confusing at the start, but start to become more clear the more you learn. But the great thing about learning all of these things is that a lot of the stuff you learn when you're learning a program, say Blender, is it's not specific to Blender. Right.
Right.
So you're learning techniques that you can transfer to other programs. And that's really, really nice. Obviously, it's kind of a pain to learn a new program. But if you have a foundation in a different program, all you need to do is just transfer the knowledge you already have and then figure out how to do it in the new program.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, I started learning 3D with Cinema 4D. That was the program I learned on. And there's a 3D modeling class at my school that I took, and it was all taught in Blender. And so, I was a step ahead of other people. Not a lot of people did 3D modeling, so it was a very like cursory beginners class to 3D modeling. Some people did, so I took the knowledge that I had of Cinema 4D, brought it to Blender, and it was a lot easier of a transition. And now at work, I use Blender. I still use Cinema 4D for my own projects because I'm comfortable in that program and I like that program. But, I would not have gotten anywhere nearly as fast as if I didn't learn a 3D package, right? So waiting to get a 3D package and then learning and then beginning 3D, I would not recommend doing that, especially when there is such an incredible free software like Blender. Now, we're not here to just kind of be like all praisey to Blender. There's plenty of things Blender does that is not great compared to other software. Okay. But as an introductory, program, which can have industry standard tools in it, I mean, I use it at work. But to begin learning 3D, begin learning the software that's kind of the basis for every other software that's important, begin doing that. So it's not whether or not you're using the right software, it's whether or not you are using any software to get to what you want to do. I mean, I would if I didn't know 3D before working at Mutiny, I would be very far behind. It would have taken.
Well, you wouldn't have a job.
I mean, yeah, they
would not have hired you.
They
if you didn't have
would not have really. No, it would have been a very reluctant hire at the very most. So it's important to just begin learning on something.
Yeah.
Now, earlier this week, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off because I'm mean.
Go ahead.
Earlier
it's
this
a little
week,
hard to tell when we're online.
I saw a video from Wade Neistat, and he talked about basically Blender versus Maya. And the reason why is because he started learning Blender on the side, and he's always done Maya. So this guy worked actually as a software instructor for DreamWorks. He taught people how to use Maya, which is a really cool job to have. But so he knows these programs really well. And he talked about how, people will ask him, if I'm taking a class on Maya or 3ds Max or Cinema 4D, and I just want to, can I do this class also in Blender? He actually advises against it. And the reason why is because the class is taught on a certain software. The instructor knows a certain software. And so if you are stuck or in trouble of something, you can't get access to the large amount of knowledge that tutor will have. So if you're doing an online course learning a certain piece of software, it is highly recommended to actually be on that software to learn, to go through that class. So I'm a Blender artist, but if I'm going to be taking a class on Modo, I need to get that trial version of Modo and begin learning that class through Modo, because you can't get access to all of that knowledge if you're stuck on some other kind of software. So in that particular instance, you are using the wrong software. Yeah.
And connecting that to a point you said earlier, you mentioned that at work you guys work in Blender, but at home you work in Cinema 4D. It's kind of the same idea with classes, right? But when you go to a professional studio, there's no guarantee that that professional studio is going to support your 3D package of choice.
Right.
So I don't particularly enjoy using 3ds Max, but if I get a job at a studio and the only licenses they have are for 3ds Max, I have to learn 3ds Max. And you have to be able to be adaptable and flexible when it comes to the programs you're using and understand how to learn quickly, because you're not always going to have that choice, right? Obviously, if you're learning, it's very nice to say, well, I'm taking this cool course, but I want to do it in Blender instead of Maya. You can do that, but ultimately, I think it's at a detriment to yourself, right?
Right.
Because if you need to do a job and you have to use Maya, well, you just threw away a great learning opportunity, right? And it's definitely going to be difficult. I mean, I went from Blender to Maya, and then I've recently switched back to Blender. And both of those transitions were very difficult because you learn how a program works and functions, and then you have to sort of rewire your brain a little bit. But I'm glad I've done that, because now I'm competent in both programs rather than just one at the beginning. And this brings me to another point, is that every program has strengths and weaknesses, and I mentioned this earlier. I think Blender has a really great modifier system. It makes it really good for modeling objects and things. Maya, in my opinion, has much better animation tools and much better UV tools without having to purchase anything. There are plugins for Blender, but that's neither here nor there, right? So if all you need to do is animation, then you should probably look into getting Maya, because the tools there are just far better than any other program at the moment. If all you want to do is learn, go for Blender. If you want to get into procedural modeling, go for Houdini. There is no one program that is the absolute GOAT of every program. Each program has pros and cons, and you have to think about those if you're trying to do something and say, okay, what program do I have, and how can I use this program to achieve my job efficiently? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the programs exist to help you do your job. And if it's not helping you do your job efficiently, then it's the wrong program. But if you're able to do the work and you can do it efficiently and at a high quality, then it's the right program.
And this is like talking about, if you're going to join a studio. If you're doing freelance, choose whatever program you want. Because, that's all about what can you do in restricted time and of high quality. And if you can do all of that in just Blender or in just Maya or in just 3ds Max, then use that, right? We're talking about getting into a studio here. The reason why I bring that up, I got someone asked me about freelance opportunities earlier. And it just got me to thinking about my own personal workflow. It's like, okay, do I just do Blender, or do I try and factor in the overhead of getting Cinema 4D? Blender is so enticing because it's free. It's really nice to have a free program. And you know what? I'm thinking now about like other parts of visual effects. So let's say camera tracking, because that's such an integral part of a visual effects workflow. You have camera tracking inside of compositing. What if you're such a big studio that you need an actual camera tracking department? Okay, what programs are there? Do you know? I mean, as like a junior VFX artist, or someone that hasn't even begun work at a studio, you only know of the After Effects camera tracker, maybe the Nuke camera tracker, maybe the Fusion camera tracker, and maybe the Blender camera tracker, and that's about it. But there are actual dedicated programs to learning camera tracking. Okay, well, how do you get your hands on that? I mean, in a way you can do the demos, but like it goes deep as to, you need to learn the process of things, okay? So throwing yourself into SynthEyes or PF Tracker isn't going to do anything for you unless you know how to actually get a good camera track, right? You need to set your ground plane. You need to set your scene scale. You need to remove trackers on reflection objects. You need to mask out moving objects and make sure the only things that are there are still. So, there are all these techniques that you need to learn how to do that you can do inside of After Effects, inside of Nuke, inside of Fusion. And then once it's time to go into like a dedicated software package for camera tracking, you know all of the basics, and all you need to do is know which button to press to achieve what you need to do.
All of these programs do essentially the same thing. Some of them are more specialized than others, right? But you have the general programs, Maya, 3ds Max, Blender. You have specialized programs, SynthEyes for motion tracking, SpeedTree for tree creation. And you can create trees inside of that, but learning how these things work and what you need to do, and especially more like the artistic side of it, right? How do you create something that looks good? And then once you can do that, and once you know how to do that and you're confident in those skills, in learning the process and learning how to make something look nice, then picking up a new program is really relatively easy, in my opinion. There is like a period of adjustment, but it's generally no more than 2 weeks in my case. Is what I found. But like we said earlier, you just have to start with a program, pick a program, run with it, learn it, do your best. Your first work is going to suck. Everybody's first work is, but it's important to just keep going and improving.
That's kind of an interesting topic on its own, right? And it kind of keeps going. It keeps popping up in a lot of our discussions is just begin, just do something, just create something. And, that it can be very daunting in the beginning. We all know. We've all been there. I remember opening up Blender 2.78 and thinking, dear God, what is this? It's daunting. It is. But it's getting over that initial fear, accepting that there will be failure, but pushing past it and doing it again, trying again. It can be extremely daunting. It can be extremely frustrating. It can scare the hell out of you. It can do all of that. But it's important to know that everyone was in that position before. Everyone.
Yeah.
And, I'll quote Harry Potter, right? All the great wizards began nothing more than what we are here, students. And, that was a paraphrase, but all of the great artists began exactly where we are now, So it's important to keep your head high, okay? Remember that you're just beginning, and to do it. Just take a note out of Nike and just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
My favorite, very stereotypical quote, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I'm of the opinion that as long as you do not stop trying, you will eventually find something that you could consider success. Maybe that takes 30 years or whatever. But it's when you stop trying, that's when you've really failed.
Yeah.
You just have to not stop trying.
And I will walk 500 miles.
And I
will walk 500. Anyway,
that song is great.
Yes, such a good one. Yeah.
Okay. So we've gotten a little bit off topic.
A little bit.
From the start. But it's an interesting topic, and I enjoy discussing it. So why don't we go to our resource roundup, Manning? What do you have for us this week?
Okay, well, this past week we've had Black Friday and Cyber Monday, so a lot of new products have been released. Right here we have Triune Digital releasing a whole bunch of new assets. So they've got lens effects, which is pretty cool. They have new sound effects. They have new action scores, new LUTs, super great. And then a bunch of their other stuff is also of really high quality. I bought some of their LUTs. I bought some of their visual effects assets. So they have a lot of really cool stuff here. Highly recommend checking that out. Blender just got a new release, 2.91, which they're saying is, it's their fourth major release in 2020, which is insane. Okay.
Absolutely nuts.
Whoever is working on Blender, these people are incredible. Okay. Pushing out major updates in 4 times a year.
Very short amount of time.
Yeah. 4 times a year, you're getting these massive updates. And so they got a lot of great cloth stuff, which is really cool. New Boolean stuff, which is awesome. Custom curve bevels. Check that out. More of that. Volume to mesh. This is kind of the big one. Volume to mesh, and then mesh to volume. So that big thing that Houdini does, that everyone loves, Blender's hopping in on that train. So that's pretty cool.
So I actually have used these modifiers, the mesh to volume, volume to mesh modifiers, and I will say they're interesting. I didn't totally figure out how to use them properly, so I think it's not quite as easy as it is in Houdini.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful feature, and I'm super excited to see what people put together with it, because there are artists that are far better than me that are going to do some absolutely crazy stuff with those modifiers.
Oh, yeah. So that's cool. Blender 2.91. Love it. This guy, Mantisa, just released a couple of really cool CCO fir trees, which is really nice. Highly recommend checking out his stuff. He's got some really cool ones, and he's got more trees than just that. He's got generic trees, spruce tree, Japanese, all that stuff. And also, I'll do a little plug. He's got a really cool training, real-time motion graphics in Blender. So using the EV engine to do a bunch of really cool stuff. So that's the overview. I'm just going to see the demo. So it's really cool to learn some of this stuff.
That looks sick.
Yeah, it's really cool. It is, how much is it? It's like $50 normally, and you might be able to get a sale on it. But yeah, it's Black Friday sale, Cyber Monday sale, all that kind of stuff. But it's really cool. I highly recommend checking that out. Mantisa is actually a beautiful artist. Some of the stuff that he makes is really gorgeous. And it's all done in Blender. Like, look at this. This is all Blender.
That is spectacular.
It's really impressive stuff.
I love that abstract style.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. So check out his stuff. He's pretty cool. The stuff that he makes is pretty cool. And yeah, check out his course. It's nice. And then right here we have, tell me about this one, Trey.
So this is Tree It, a free tree generator. I use this a lot when I'm generating plants because I don't have the money for a speed tree subscription. It's definitely a really good starting program for kind of learning tree generation, using references, things like that. It's definitely not the best. It has a lot of flaws, and I find that the trees it produces tend to look a little bit low poly compared to some of the trees that are produced for games nowadays. Maybe that's just because I don't know what I'm doing, which is also true. But I highly recommend it if you need trees very quickly. This is a great program to start with to generate what you need in terms of foliage, and you don't have to pay a dime. So that's always a big plus for any program, regardless of quality.
Love freeware. Love it. It's so good. Awesome. Well, it looks like that's our show, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everybody that joined us. If you want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe and like. It helps us know that you guys want to listen to this, and it helps us know what works and what doesn't. So We hope that you all enjoyed the show. And from us, goodbye. What did you say? Good morning, good afternoon?
It's good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and goodbye.
Okay. I'll just back up a little bit. I just totally blanked.
No, I like this ending. This is way better.
Yeah.
Cut, print, we're done.
That's just Trey has no idea how to end.